Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Anglo Election Insights, where we are on election eve for the upcoming Australian federal election. I will be presenting you with some maps and providing some general commentary on my thoughts going into the final night before the count. Now, you will know more once you are watching this video, but over in the UK, results are starting to come in for the local council elections, and Reform at this stage have already made significant gains. But the big story of the night is going to be their very, very narrow victory at the Runcorn and Helsby by-election, where they won by 6 votes, overturning a 35% or 35-point lead that Labor carried into this election from 2024. But what you guys came here for was Australian content. So let's start with a little rundown on the state of play. Now, I'm aware that later this evening there could be another Roy Morgan, there might be another news poll, there might even be another new Demos AU poll, and that could change things, but this is what I have to work with currently. So YouGov's final MRP was reported a night or two ago, and it was very bullish for Labor. Their median projection was 84 seats for Labor and just 47 for the coalition, with a vastly expanded crossbench. As far as some of the gains and losses, I don't find anything particularly controversial about crediting the independents with those 4 seats. Neither do I believe that Labor winning both Brisbane and Sturt is controversial. That makes up part of my own central prediction and has for a little while. More, I think, is going to rely on the local factor of how effective Ian Goodenough is as a Liberal spoiler, but that's certainly a live possibility. However, I do take a little bit of issue with these 4 seats. Now, it's not to say that they can't flip. That's not true at all. But I do believe that it would be a very good night for basically any of these seats to fall to Labor. So, for example, Menzies features a pretty strong Liberal member who has engaged quite well with the Chinese community in that seat. There is also an independent who is, I believe, running an open ticket that might disrupt some of Labor's vote, having been a prior candidate for the Labor Party. Braddon requires a massive swing to Labor, and I do realise that the current margin is probably a little bit inflated for the Liberals, especially given the member is retiring, but it still requires a significant swing. And even in this last week of polling, we're only really seeing, up to 1% national swings to Labor, so that would be quite a significant local result. In Bonner and Banks, well, Banks in particular, David Coleman, again, is a strong Liberal MP with good relationships with the local Chinese Australian community. I believe he would be relatively safe. And in Bonner, the Labor are beginning to spend some money there, but I think they've realised too late how competitive the seat is. Again, another sort of veteran LNP MP who should be able to defend that seat. I note too that there's been a high amount of postal vote applications in Bonner. So it could be that on the night, the initial results look quite good for Labor, but then later on, the LNP comes back and overturns that lead. I'll just quickly run through some of the other polling just so you guys know what I have to work with. Freshwater came out last night with a 1.5% lead on two-party preferred for Labor. I don't know what is up with their samples though, because they are constantly finding swings to the major parties. With the coalition on 37% and the Greens only on 12%. That seems a little bit out of step with the rest of the industry, but it was a bigger sample size than usual. Demos AU has released two national polls this week. The first one was a 2 point lead for Labor, with the major party vote combined only equaling sort of about 60%. And it's similar for this week, however, this time it's only a 1% lead for Labor, mostly owing to a drop in the Greens vote and a slight increase in the coalitions. You can see the comparisons on primaries there. What's interesting about Demos AU is that they still use preference allocations or flows from 2022, and if the Roy Morgan is anything to go by, and particularly that JWS polling on the nature of fond preferences, then that could in reality be something closer to 50-50, but I don't want to speculate too much on that. We'll keep scrolling just a little bit just to make sure I capture them all. Redbridge and Spectre Strategy, who is a new outfit, they both reported a 3% Labour lead nationally. And then if we continue to go down, around the same time, Resolve Strategic also reported the same 3% lead, although that had come in from their previous poll. Again, we'll have to keep scrolling. Essential and News poll credit Labor with a 2% lead, and then the Roy Morgan was a 3% Labor lead, which was significantly in from like a 5.5% the previous week. So it would appear that while Labor still firmly has the lead in the polling, that there has been some slight movement towards the coalition, and there is a thought that it's minor right-wing parties' preferences that might prove decisive in closing that gap between the two major parties. So, without further ado, I'm going to present to you guys three maps. This is something of a central prediction. This is more of a bullish Labour prediction. And then finally on the right here, we have quite a bullish proposition for the coalition. It might seem a little bit kind of weak to provide three, but I really do want you guys to understand that this is as much guesswork as it is anything else. We don't know exactly what message is going to cut through. We don't know exactly what the national mood is, and I think it's prudent to map out a couple of different scenarios, and just to explain to you guys that I'm very open-minded on how the night's going to play out, and at this stage nearly nothing would surprise me. So, having shielded myself from future criticism in that manner, let's take a little bit of a tour. So in my central prediction, I have a couple of seats changing hands. So as I have often had, the seat of Brisbane will be won by Labor, with them overtaking the Greens and winning on Green preferences. I have the seat of Paterson in the Hunter region of New South Wales, narrowly flipping to the coalition off the back of preferences from the independent running, as well as what I'm assuming will be a higher One Nation vote in that area. I have Cowper narrowly flipping for the independent, and you'll notice that I've tried to differentiate between the coalition and the independent with my colours. Hopefully that makes sense and helps. Getting into Greater Sydney, just owing to a couple of things, I've decided to flip Bradfield to the independent, Nicolette Buller. As much as she did caught some controversy over getting banned from that salon, I'm not sure that the slight sense of angst about these teal independents is quite as strong in Sydney as it perhaps is in Melbourne. And also, Andy Yin, he was going to run an open how to vote card ticket, but he's now switched and he's preferencing Nicolette Buller. And the Liberals have constantly been pessimistic internally about this seat. So at this stage, I don't really have much choice but to flip it for Nicolette Buller. I've also got Labor retaining Bennelong in this scenario. I just think that the local MP is pretty impressive, and the Liberal challenger Scott Young has courted some controversy. I initially thought he was quite a strong candidate, but there have been some questions raised about him, and I just don't quite think that he's going to get over the line. I'm not sure this is the sort of area that is moving towards the coalition at this point. I have Fowler being retained by Dai Lee, and I also have the coalition winning in Gilmore narrowly. Looking to Tasmania, it's actually a status quo result with a pretty, maybe a very slight swing either way possible in Bass, and a swing to Labor, but not enough to win the seat in Braddon, and Labor able to hang on, probably with a slight swing to Rebecca White in Lyons. Looking at Victoria, Monash, I have the Liberals hanging on there with a lot of splintering of vote between two competitive independents and the Labor Party. I have the Liberals ever so slightly ahead in McEwen, and I have Wannon staying with the Liberal Party. Part of that is my suspicion that Climate 200 have had to redivert some of their funds to defend their incumbents, because a week and a half ago my mailbox was filling up with material from both sides, but it would seem that neither the Liberals or Alex Dyson are campaigning that hard at the moment, and there has been some internal reports that the Liberals are no longer as worried about this seat, as well as Forrest in WA. I have Labor just ahead in Chisholm, and as a bit of a hot take, I have Monique Ryan losing her seat, and Michael Sukkar hanging on to his. But that is a bit of a hot take, I will admit. I'm just a little bit concerned that there could be a little bit more preference leakage, and Monique Ryan's primary vote could suffer a bit, and she might bleed back to Labor and the Greens. I know that many people in my comments have told me that the scandals surrounding Amelia Hamer are more significant, but she has the Liberal brand to hide behind, whereas Monique Ryan very much charts her own course. So I think personal scandal has an outsized effect on her. But I could absolutely see her even increasing her margin due to some of the demographic change that's going on there. So take that with a grain of salt. Labor, I believe, will sweep Metropolitan Adelaide with a significant swing against in Spence and a very high One Nation vote. But I think they'll be able to overcome Liberal sandbagging efforts in Sturt. And then over in WA, I have the Liberals taking Bullwinkle off the back of some Nats preferences. I think the general consensus is that they've pulled just ahead of Labor in that seat, and then the Nats preferences should get them over the line. But Labor is certainly competitive. Labor should retain Tangney. I currently have the Liberals ahead in Moore and Kate Chaney just ahead in Curtin. And that's about all. So that is my central projection. As far as a more bullish proposition for Labor and a particularly bearish one for the coalition, the major changes are the loss of Dixon and Bonner in suburban Brisbane from the coalition to Labor. We have a couple of seats falling to the crossbench, Kildare and Wannon. We have the additional loss of Deakin and Labor hanging on in McEwen. I also have Labor winning in both Bullwinkle and Moore. So there are additional seats too that would be competitive in this scenario. The coalition might be in trouble in places like Flinders, Forest, and even McPherson in this scenario. I've got Labor winning Patterson too, I should mention. Gilmore is one that I still have the coalition gaining, and I think looking at the map, that would be about their only gain. And that's just me thinking that Andrew Constance's name recognition allows them to limp over the line, but even that is probably a pretty controversial call, given what else I have flipping to Labor in this scenario. Leichhardt, I think the demographic change is working against Labor there, but that's another one that would run very close. And then finally, looking at my sort of more bullish map for the coalition, I have them winning in Lingiari. I have them retaking the teal seats of Curtin and Kooyong. I have them successfully sandbagging in Sturt, as well as Cowper from the Independent. They will win back the seat of Ryan. Looking into Sydney, they'll win Patterson. They will sandbag in both they'll win Bennelong and win in Bradfield as well. I haven't flipped Werriwa or Hawke in this scenario, but those could both be surprise coalition pickups, as well as Lyons or Solomon. And then you can see here in Melbourne winning Chisholm as well. So that would sort of fit what some of these LNP insiders are feeding us about the coalition winning up to 10 seats or a dozen seats from Labor. That gets them up to 68. They wouldn't really be able to form government from there with 4 Green seats, because in this scenario I have Richmond going to the Greens, as with my central case, but if Labor have a good night, they should win. So you notice how the crossbench changes depending on which major party does well on the night. I have, in my central prediction, I have the Greens just retaining Ryan from the LNP, and the LNP staying in the count in Griffith, which will deliver to Max Chandler Mather. And I also have them knocking Labor out of the count in Richmond. Whereas if the coalition have a good night, I believe that brings McNamara into play for the Greens at the expense of Ryan. Whereas if Labor are having a good night, I think the Greens will hang on to Ryan and Melbourne only, and they'll be knocked out of the count in Brisbane, while the LNP will fall into third place at the 3 candidate preferred in Griffith and elect Labor. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a roundup of my thoughts. If we do get some late polling or any late news and I feel that it's significant, I might put out one final map tomorrow morning, just for comparison's sake, once the results start coming in. But at this stage, this kind of forms my final central prediction, which would be Labor falling just into minority. But as I say, plenty of room for surprises on either side of that, depending on how the national mood plays out. Thanks for watching, everybody, and thanks for watching over the course of this year, essentially, since I started the channel. It's grown quite considerably, a lot more than I thought it would. So I hope you're enjoying the content. Once this election's done, the rest of this year will be relatively quiet on the in terms of elections within the Anglosphere, but that doesn't mean there won't be a lot to talk about. And then obviously in 2026 and beyond, we'll have more elections to cover, and I plan on creating more resources and more community, and just doing more, basically. So until then, thank you very much. And if I could please ask, if you guys are in the comments, I have seen some negative commentary about another YouTuber, Aussie's Elect, who covers similar content to me, with some comparisons between myself and him that don't paint him in a particularly good light. I don't particularly want to see that in the comments of my videos. Please, I can't police or control what you say, but I would ask that you be respectful of him in my comments. Thanks for watching, guys. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and you're enjoying the content. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and please join myself, Aussie's Elect, and Sormon for our live stream of the election tomorrow night starting from 6 p.m. Thanks again. See you tomorrow.